Well, welcome to Compass. Our mission is navigating people to God. It's been a while since I've actually done this, like not just in front of a camera by myself. So we're glad that you're here, glad you're worshiping with us. If you're a guest, if you're watching online, an extra special welcome to you. We'd love to connect with you, and the best way to connect in this season that we're in is to text the word 94000 and new 94. Man, I am messing up. Compass Connect NFW to 94000. We're so glad that you're here tonight. My name's Nate. I'm the pastor here at the North Fort Worth location, and we're so glad that you're joining us here wherever you're worshiping from. In fact, right now, what I'd love for you to do is, if you're watching online, let us know in the chat section where you're watching from. We want to say hi to you. We want to know where you're worshiping from today. And I just have to admit up front as we begin, I am a huge fan of the show The Walking Dead. Now, I know some of you, you're judging me because of that. You can't believe that your pastor actually watches that show, while others of you are like, yes, my pastor watches the show. I don't have to feel so bad anymore. And I'll admit, it's not a show for everybody. Like, not everybody loves the show The Walking Dead. My wife, Amanda, she can't stand the show. She doesn't like it. It's just too much for her. But I have come to love this show over the last 10 seasons, and I've found that I almost feel like I have become a part of this group because those who have written the show have done such a good job of telling the story and helping us understand the characters. Now, there's a theme that clearly runs through this show, and it's this idea that the main characters, they understand it, that you can't do life alone. In fact, on several occasions in the show, you see the characters realizing that they would not have survived had it not been for the other people that are around them. Now, I'm not sure if that was the main theme that the writers were kind of thinking of when they came up with the idea for this show, but it's clearly an idea that we see throughout. Last week, we kicked off this series called We Didn't See It Coming, and it's our hope through this series that we would look at some of the things that we all experience, but maybe we weren't expecting, some things that maybe we should have expected, but it took a pandemic in order for us to really remind us of that. And so last week, we kicked off this series talking about this first lesson that we didn't need a building to be the church. And really, this is such an important thing that we understand, especially in this season that we've been living in. And look, if you missed that message last week, I would encourage you, go back, watch that message online. You can go to our Compass Church NFW YouTube page, and you can watch all of our past messages that we've been doing over the last several weeks. But I would encourage you to go watch that message because it's a message that we cannot forget as the church. And how true is this for us right now that while we're kind of displaced from our permanent location at Eaton High School, we didn't need a building to be the church, did we? I mean, we've been able to continue to meet, we've been able to continue to gather, and we did not need a building to do that. Well, there's another lesson that I want to look at tonight that we learned over these last few weeks, and that is this, is we learned that we needed each other more than we thought. And I get, some of you might argue that statement. You might think to yourself, you know what? This has been a great season for me. I'm an introvert. I like being away from people. I don't need anybody around me. Maybe you can relate to this meme that I saw posted on social media that said this: you never really realize how antisocial you are until there's a pandemic and your life doesn't really change that much, right? Some of you, that's how you feel. But I want to show you today why I believe we needed this, even maybe more than we thought. Now, let me ask you something as we begin today. When you were a little kid, like say, let's go back to elementary school, did you like being left home alone? I hated being left home alone. Now, maybe some of you like that, but my guess is the majority of us in the room would rather have had our parents around because we didn't like being left home alone. But you know, that all tends to change as we get a little bit older, doesn't it? We get to middle school or high school, and we get to this point where, like, I don't need anybody else around. You can go ahead and leave. I'll be fine all by myself. There even comes that point where we become kind of like Kevin McAllister in the Home Alone movies, where we're like, you know, I don't need you. I don't need a family. I don't want to be by myself. Or we even find ourselves standing at the top of the stairs saying, I'm living alone. Do you hear me? I'm living alone. You know what I'm talking about, right? And there's this point in all of our lives where this idea of being alone, it sounds really, really good. doesn't it? But if we're honest with ourselves, we realize that being alone isn't that much fun. And the reason is this: we were wired for community. We've been wired with this need for other people in our lives because we cannot do life alone. And I know some of you might argue, otherwise you would be like, you know what, that meme that you just showed, Pastor Nate, that describes me so well, and I don't need anybody else in my life. But here's the thing. I really find that hard to believe that you could live your whole life alone without anyone else as a part of it and feel as though that life is complete. You see, we need each other. It is that simple. Now, we can have those periods of time where we're away from other people, maybe even during this whole social distancing and quarantining thing. You had to have those moments with your own family where you put everybody in separate corners of the house so that you could have some peace and quiet to yourself. But that's not something that we could do our entire life. I mean, think about it. Even in the movie Home Alone, Kevin McAllister realizes he doesn't want to be alone anymore. And get this, there's a reason why we have sports teams. There's a reason why we have organizations like Big Brothers and Big Sisters. There's a reason why we have fraternities and sororities. There's a reason even why we have our military. I think if there's something that this season has taught us, it's taught us that life without other people is really not a good place to be. You know, John Ortberg in his book, Everybody's Normal Until You Get to Know Them, which I absolutely love the title of that book because that's so true, isn't it? He writes this about searching for the solution of loneliness. He says, for centuries, some of the smartest grown-ups who ever lived have devoted themselves to this problem. This God-designed hunger for community is why Plato wrote the Republic and Augustine wrote the City of God. It's why so many of our stories are about longing to reach community. From the Odyssey to Walton's Mountain, from Camelot to Mayberry, from Friends to Boys in the Hood. It's why we attend church, we join bowling leagues, and we go on blind dates. It's why the single most remembered American speech of the 20th century was a plea for all human beings to one day be able to eat together at the same table of fellowship, to join hands, to sing a common song. Martin Luther King Jr., he captured the conscience of a society because he was articulating not just his dream, but a human dream and God's dream. And you see, I think you can say what you want about this time where we've been social distancing, but I think if there's anything that we've learned during this time of separation, what we learned is this: we needed each other more than we thought. Now, if you've got a Bible or a Bible app, I want you to turn with me to the book of Ecclesiastes. We're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 4 today. And it's in Ecclesiastes 4 that Solomon, who is the writer of this kind of memoir of sorts, he writes about how he had experienced the need for other people in his life and how we need people in our lives as well. And I think it's something that these last few months have shown us. So listen to what it says, starting in verse 7 here. He says, I observed yet another example of something meaningless under the sun. This is the case of a man who is all alone, without a child or a brother, yet who works hard to gain as much wealth as he can. But then he asks himself, who am I working for? Why am I giving up so much pleasure now? It is also meaningless and depressing. Two people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help, but someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, two people lying close together can keep each other warm, but how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. Now, do you catch what Solomon is saying here? Solomon, who is a guy who had everything, like you have to understand that Solomon, he was the king of Israel at this time. He has wisdom, he has wealth, he has the best camel that money could buy. He probably had the Maserati of all donkeys of that time. I mean, he has everything. And yet, what does he do? He realizes that everything is meaningless if he doesn't have other people as a part of his life. And Solomon, with all his wealth and his wisdom, his power and his popularity, he realized that apart from having God at the center of his life and having these meaningful relationships with other people, that life just seemed meaningless. Now, my guess is over these last few months, some of you have realized the same. I've seen it on social media. Some of you, you've been decluttering your closets. You've been cleaning out rooms in your house because you were so bored you had nothing else to do. And so you started doing that and you realized you had a whole bunch of stuff that you really didn't need. but what you really needed was community with other people. Now, in these verses that we read together, I think Solomon points out a few things about our need for community that I want to look at today, and really this whole idea that we cannot do life alone. And look, this is so important for us to understand because from the very beginning, God wired us for community. I mean, that's why he created Adam and Eve. He wanted community with us. And so this desire for community, you have to understand, it has been around since the very beginning of time. And think about this, like even when Jesus walked the earth, like Jesus had his own community group. His 12 disciples, they were his community group. They were his boys. And they were doing everything together. They were hanging out together. It was something they did. It was because Jesus understood this need for other people in his life. You know, about a month ago, our family, during the midst of quarantining, we decided one night that we were going to go and surprise the families in our community group with a little surprise on their doorstep. And so we decided we were going to do it where we would just leave it on the door, ring the doorbell, and leave, like ding dong ditch. And so we started going house to house, and we were really successful at all of the houses except for two. And one of the houses that we went up to, we got caught because our son Blake's friend Nate was actually out playing basketball in the driveway. And so Blake got out of the van and he walked up and he handed Nate the gift. And you should have seen the joy on their faces after 50 days of not seeing each other. Like they were so happy to see one another. And then Blake got in the car after we left. We talked to him for a little bit outside in the driveway. And Blake, he got in and he said this: after 50 plus days of being just with you and Mom and McKenna, man, it was so good to have some human interaction again, right? And I thought to myself, wait, I'm not human? Like, what happened here, right? But maybe my guess is that some of you have felt the same way, that you just wish that there was some human interaction in your life. You know, last week we talked about the fact that the church, it doesn't need a building to be the church. It's about the people. And I'll admit, I have missed so much this gathering together for worship with one another. I've missed so much being able to meet at Eaton High School and worship with you. But you know what I've missed even more? What I've missed even more is the ability to connect in community before and after services. What I've missed is being able to hear what's going on in your life, or to spend just a moment praying with you and asking you what's going on and how can I be praying for you. I've missed getting to connect in person with many of you. But you know, when I think about our Sunday morning experiences, which I love and I think are so important, and I think many of you, those of you who are watching online too, have figured out is just how much you've missed those. What I hope that you missed even more is community. And hear me on this. Like what happens on Sunday mornings, or now in our case, starting next Saturday night at Roanoke on Saturday nights, what happens here when we worship together is important. But what we've learned is we don't need a building to worship together, do we? That technology has allowed us to continue to worship online. It didn't stop the church from gathering together. It may not feel exactly the same as it does in person, but it never stopped us, nor will it ever stop us. But I hope what it has shown us even more is just how important the need for other people in our lives really is. Now, for those of you who are plugged into a community group, or for those of you who are going through Rooted online right now, which I just got to say congratulations, I'm so proud of you for doing that. Or for those of you who are volunteers and who are connected in that way, like you've probably already figured this out, but I want to say this tonight because I think we all need to hear that, and that is this: circles are better than rows. And I want you to think about this. In a row on a Sunday morning, or now on Saturday nights, you might sit next, or actually 2 seats away from somebody else, and you might know their name, or you might know them, and like you recognize their face. But if you saw them at the grocery store, would you actually know anything about them? Would you actually be able to ask them what's going on in their life? You may not even know their name, the people you sit next to. The reason is this: community doesn't happen in rows. Community happens in circles. And that's why I say circles are better than rows. And I know our circles have had to look a lot different over the last few months, haven't they? I think the people in these Zoom pictures that you see, I think what they would tell you is even though they've had to meet and it's had to look a little bit different, they've been so grateful for these circles that they've had. You see, Solomon had figured this out, and that's why he wrote about it. And so with the rest of the time that we have today, I want to look at three things that happen from Solomon's words here in Ecclesiastes 4 when we experience true community with others. The first thing that Solomon says in these verses here is when we experience community with others, what it does for us is this: it provides us with mutual encouragement. Look again at verse 9 and notice what it says. It says, two people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If you've got someone else who's in your corner, who's encouraging you and cheering you on, there's a much better chance that you're going to succeed, right? That we need those people in our corners to provide us with the encouragement and the support that we need in those difficult times in life. Proverbs 27:17 says this. It says, as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. This is why community is so important. It's something that my wife Amanda and I have found in any church that we've been a part of, is just how important the need for community with other people is. Because those in our community groups have become friends who sharpen us, who encourage us. And sometimes it's just something as simple as a text that says, hey, I'm praying for you, or I just wanted to check in to see how you're doing. And you know, we need that in our lives, don't we? You know, maybe right now you can think of somebody in your life who needs that simple call or that simple text. You can go ahead if you want to right now. I'll let you text right in the middle of the message. Text that person and say, hey, how can I be praying for you? What can I call you for? Do that right now. You know, I like to think of those that I'm connected to in community. I like to think of them as kind of like my 12th man. Now, for those of you who are Texas A&M fans, I'm catering to you right now. Like they say that Texas A&M fans are the best fans in all of college football. I would argue otherwise. It's Ohio State fans, right? But the home team, they say, is usually the difference between a team winning and losing a game. And if you go to Aggie Stadium, you find that those fans are crazy. You go to Ohio State, those fans are crazy. And it's that fan base that can push the team over the top and give them a little extra oomph that they need in those games. And you see, the same thing happens in community. Like we need that kind of encouragement in our lives, don't we? I realize as we begin meeting in person, it's going to take some time for our weekend experience at our Roanoke campus to fill up. That some of you may rather just watch online because it's a little bit of a drive. Some of you'll be cautious because of health concerns that you have, or maybe because you fall into one of those high-risk categories because of your age. And if that's you, we want you to stay home. We want you to be healthy. We want you to stay safe. So keep watching us online. Some of you won't feel comfortable coming back right away, and that's okay too. But I know at some point, this pandemic is going to pass, and I know at some point we are all going to gather and worship together. I don't know where it might be. It might be back at Eaton High School. It might be at some other location in North Fort Worth. It might be we get into our new building before we actually have that place again. I don't know. But what I have to share with you is a fear that I have, and it's something that I've had as a fear during this whole time that we've been apart. I fear that some of you, honestly, you could drift away in the midst of this season. That you'll worship online for a time being, but what will happen is you'll never really get connected to community, and you'll drift away. And I don't want that for any of you. Hebrews 10:25 says this. He says, and let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near. You see, when the early church began meeting together, one of the things that we saw about that, and we looked at it last week, is that they were gathering in each other's homes and they were fellowshipping together. They were having community together. But as the time went on, there comes this point where they stopped doing this. And the Hebrews writer, he's writing this because he realized that they were missing out on what they needed the most. They were missing out on community. And some of you, honestly, if you don't get plugged in, even in this season that we're in right now, and if you miss out on community, you could miss out on everything, and you may just leave, and we may never see you again. And that's not something I want to happen for you. And so we see that that community, it provides us with mutual encouragement. It helps us in those seasons where we're frustrated, we don't know what to do, but it also provides us with something else as well that I want to look at tonight, and that is this. It provides us with mutual support as well. Look at verse 10. It says this: if one person falls, the other can reach out and help, but someone who falls alone is in real trouble. I think we all have those times in life where our world seems like it's crashing down, like we've fallen and we're not sure what to do. And honestly, we get in those seasons where it's just not a good thing. And what we need is that support, and we need that outstretched hand to pick us up. You may have even experienced in this season that we've been in where you've just gotten to the end of your rope, where you're hanging on for dear life, and you needed that other hand to grab hold of, and you need to have that person pull you up. We need those kind of people in our lives, don't we? We need those friends like Proverbs 18:24 talks about. It says this: there are friends who destroy each other, but a real friend sticks closer than a brother. AT&T, I remember when I was a kid, they had this old slogan, an ad campaign that said, reach out and touch someone. And I remember it was like a long time ago, right? I'm dating myself by the picture that you just saw. But it was a reminder to me that they were trying to tell their customers, and they were trying to tell those potential customers that they had that our service is so good that if you just pick up the phone, even though there's a phone line and some distance between you, that our service is so good that it will feel like you are right there in the room with that person, providing them support. That they were saying that in an instant, you could reach out and you could touch somebody's life with a simple phone call. And their marketing department, they understood this idea that together we provide each other with the support that we need. One of my favorite things that we do here at Compass is Rooted. It's our 11-week discipleship initiative, and I love how it brings people together from all kinds of different walks of life that we just don't know. I mean, it is unbelievable what happens through Rooted, and I've seen it so many times that God has just moved and worked in those communities together. And oftentimes what happens is these people who walk in on the first week, they don't even feel like they will be able to connect with the people. They become the best of friends, and after those 11 weeks are up, they form these community groups that are there supporting each other. I've seen this over and over again when there's a family going through a difficult time, that group is surrounding them and rallies around them. When they're in the hospital, they're the ones who are praying with them. They beat the pastor to the hospital. They're providing them with meals and the support that they need. I've even seen it in this pandemic, families caring for and supporting other families. And this is what it's all about. If you've ever visited California in the Redwood Forest, you know that the trees there, they tower some 300 feet tall, and they're thousands of years old. And when you look at the trees, you would think to yourself, man, these trees must have a deep root system in order for them to stand that tall and to live that long. But actually what you find out is, if you read about these trees, what you find out is that the root system of a redwood tree is actually very shallow. And the reason these trees have stood the test of time is that their roots have become intertwined, that they're tied together, that they've become interlocked, and so they support each other. But not only that, they strengthen each other as well to stand up to the wind and the storms that come their way. And the same is true of us in being involved in community with others. I think if there's anything that we've learned during this pandemic, it's really just how much we needed each other, maybe even more than we thought. Because community is what provides us with mutual support. It provides us with mutual encouragement. But there's one last thing from Solomon's words here that I want to look at, and that is this. Community provides us with mutual strength as well. Look back at what Solomon says here in verse 12. He says, a person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. And what Solomon is getting at here is this, is just like these redwood trees could easily be taken down by these strong storms of the wind, the same is true of our lives if we don't have other people that will provide us with the support and the encouragement and the strength that we need to get through those difficult times. You see, as we deal with life, we're going to come face to face with things that could easily knock us down. But when we've got others around us that will encourage us and support us and strengthen us, they give us what we need to weather the storms in life. You know, as I said at the beginning of my message, I love the show The Walking Dead. And one of the themes throughout that show is that these characters have realized just how much they need each other. I think if this pandemic has shown us anything, it's shown us that we need each other too. You know, I was doing a little research on this whole zombie apocalypse thing one day at a bookstore. I just came across the section, and so I started opening it up, and I came across this book called The Zombie Survival Guide, and it's got all these tips for how to survive a zombie apocalypse. And I don't believe in that or anything like that, but I was flipping through it, and I found this one tip, and I took a picture of it because I thought it was so good. It said this: always travel in groups, never travel alone. And look, we're not preparing for some zombie attack, but I think maybe over the past few months, you kind of felt like maybe if you're a fan of The Walking Dead, like we've been in some scenes from The Walking Dead show, like we're walking around hiding from ourselves, right? But I think we've got to take this tip to heart. We need to always travel in groups, and we should never travel alone. And here's why. Because we need each other. We need each other to support, to encourage, to strengthen us in these difficult times. We need each other when there are mixed messages everywhere. We need each other to hold us accountable. We need each other in the midst of a pandemic. We need each other on the other side of the pandemic. We need each other when there is political divide in our country. We need each other when the sting of racism has reared its ugly head in our country. And you know, as your pastor, as a leader, as a Christ follower, honestly, I thought it was unthinkable for me to not take a moment just to stop here as we kind of close today to reflect and to learn maybe, or even just to mention how hurtful what we've seen taking place in the past few weeks in our country, like the death of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, have been for all of us, but especially for our black brothers and sisters and their families who I know are hurting. They're grieving, they're scared. Some of you who are watching this, I know that you're hurting and grieving and scared right now. And we want you to know that we're with you, we stand with you, we love you. They need us right now, church. We need to stand together back to back to break down these racial barriers in our country. And the only way that happens, I believe, is if we come together across racial lines to find healing and give hope in this country that we live in. And I do want to say this as well, because I have some friends who are doing some really, really good stuff on the front lines who are scared right now as well. Like they feel hated just by association because of what has been seen on the television, and they are feeling all alone right now. I want you to know, if you're serving on the front lines, you're not alone. We love you, and we're praying for you as well. If there's anything this season has shown us, it's this: that we need each other, and that Jesus is the answer to unify a political and divisive and prejudiced world that we live in. You know, before March 11th, 2020, I'm not sure that any of us saw what happened coming. But if there's something that we learned during this time, we learned that we needed each other more than we thought. You know, church, I want to encourage you. If you're not connected in community, to get connected here at Compass in this season, whether that's online or when you begin worshiping in person, we want you to help find a place to get connected in community. And the best way to do that right now is to text the words "Connect NFW" to 94000. If you're worshiping online, we want you to text those words, and we're going to reach out to you. If you're joining us in person, come talk to us about, hey, I want to get connected to community. How do I do that? Because we need to remind ourselves over and over again, we should always travel in groups, never travel alone. You know, next weekend, we begin our in-person gatherings here at our Roanoke location. And if you're comfortable, if you feel ready to worship in person, we're ready whenever you're ready. If you are ready to worship with us, join us on Saturday nights here at 5 p.m. If you're not ready, I would encourage you to keep worshiping online. Host watch parties, maybe do a tailgate party. If you come on Saturday nights, host a watch party on Sunday mornings, because it can make a difference in somebody's life. Because if there's something this season has told us, it's told us and it showed us that we need each other. And there are people right now that you know who need community in their life. So church, let's not stop meeting together. Let's not neglect meeting together. Let's be the church wherever that might be, because we need each other. Would you pray with me? God, we come to you right now. We thank you for your love for us. We thank you that you show us what community looks like, that you wired us for community. God, I just pray that we as the church, we would come together in this season, that we would find others who can help us in these difficult times that we're in. God, I pray for those who are hurting right now. I pray for our black brothers and sisters who are just struggling in this season that we're in. I pray for those who are working on the front lines and are trying to do the right thing. God, I just pray a hedge of protection around all of it. And God, I pray that in the midst of this season, God, that we would look to you for the guidance and direction we need. We pray all of this in your name. Amen.